going back to the computational thinking model that is used by engineers, coders, etc., we covered this before, but just a little review. You've got decomposition, which is breaking big problems into smaller, easier to manage problems. Pattern recognition, which is looking for a repeating sequence, something that you've done before, something that you've seen before. Abstraction, which is taking out what's important and ignoring what is not important. And algorithmic design, which is sort of creating a process or a set of steps. So we're going to take these things but put them in our own little model of how to use it in art class. So my overall idea was to take the planning process, so decomposition, abstraction, and algorithmic thinking, as kind of right what you're doing at the beginning of doing an art project. And then we're creating, and then you're judging your art. And then when you come across a problem or something that you want to fix, you start the process all over again. Okay, so step 1 of the process is contemplate. That's the first of our 3 C's. This step includes mainly sort of problem solving and planning. Let's focus on this one first. Okay, so imagine you're opening your first art assignment and you read through what I want you to do. And some of you are going to feel great about it. You're going to say, great, I have a plan, I'm going to go for it. You're just going to hit the ground running. Some of you might stare at it for a while and kind of be like, I have no idea where to start. So this is going to help both of those types of people. Sometimes the people that are just ready to go, have an idea right off the bat, maybe their idea isn't fully formed and maybe they're going to get in the middle of the project and then come up with problems later. Planning is always good. For those of you that might not have any idea where to start, this planning stage, this problem solving stage is really going to help. Decomposition is the first step in this process, and I took this directly from the computational thinking strategies. Decomposition is just taking a problem and breaking it down into smaller parts. So let's use our second sketchbook assignment as an example. So here's your second sketchbook assignment. I have sort of structured your assignments so that it would be easier for you to do this process. So that's why I'm just sort of working on changing them around a little bit. I start off with a purpose. I think that as high school students, you're probably always wondering, what's the point of this? When am I ever going to use this, right? So I start with the purpose. For this one, it is to try to draw different fabric folds, to experiment how fabric changes on a surface, to practice value and shading techniques. And then, because we're learning problem solving, I've presented the entire project as a challenge or a problem to solve. So, the challenge for this one is, how might you draw fabric to look realistic? How do you solve that problem? I want you to try to create a value drawing of fabric in many different folds. You must add value, which is shading, and incorporate creativity or personal touch if you can. So, and then I give you a bunch of ideas in the technique. I tell you what you need to know, the stuff that we've learned that you're going to use again, like choosing a subject. We talked about shadows, creating strong shadows and able to draw them, and things. Then I include resources. So I have a couple pictures there, and I have 2 videos you can watch, and then materials, what you can use so that you can do a good job with this. I'm really not that strict usually with the materials that you use. The only thing is, if you're using an online drawing program, I want you to be able to create shadows, so no like Microsoft Paint. But basically that's it. That's your sketchbook number 2. So now we have to work on how to get started. A lot of you, this is a lot of information, so getting started feels a little bit stressful. So going back to our planning process, what are the problems that we need to break down? You're going to have to pick a subject, some type of fabric. You're going to have to figure out how to put a light source on it. So whether you're using natural light like sunshine, or whether you're putting a lamp on it or something like that, you're going to have to figure out how to make those shadows that you can draw them. You're going to have to figure out what you're going to use to draw it. This is both what you just have in your house, but also, what's going to be best. So if you're going to use a lot of detail, you're not going to use something like crayon or charcoal or something like that that's hard to control, because then you're going to end up having a hard time. That's why I made that video in Drawing and Design 1 about choosing the right materials and how that's kind of everything. I also said that if you can, try to include a personal touch or creativity. So how can you make this you? How can you turn this from just a boring picture of fabric to something that is personal to you? So those are your 4 problems that you have to sort of solve. We took the problem and we broke it down into smaller parts. Now this is what I think I might want to do. This is one of my favorite chairs to sit in, right under some of my paintings and a photograph. And this is a little blanket or shawl that was given to me after my grandfather died. It was his. It was something he, put around his shoulders when he got cold. So there's my personal touch. I have my subject. The problems I see with it right now, sort of finding new problems, is the pattern on the fabric might be hard for me. And also right now, I don't see a whole lot of highlights or shadows. So I'm going to have to put a light on this. So there's a real life example of how I would break this down into smaller problems. I also kind of have to take a good picture or find a good angle, because where this chair is, I can't really move it, and I'm not going to stand in the middle of the room to draw this. So a picture is probably best. Okay, the next stage in the contemplate or planning process, taken from computational thinking, is abstraction. So what's important? What's really important to me when I'm completing this drawing, and what's really important to the teacher? So what did I ask you to do? So what's important to me is that at the end of this, I can tell that this is my grandfather's shawl. What's really important to the teacher, which is also me, is that I show value, that I show highlights, midtones, and that I experiment with fabric. So that's sort of taking the important parts and the not important parts. I'm not going to necessarily worry about what I'm using. I told you guys you could use basically anything. Just make sure you're thinking about your materials and what you want to use. What's also not important is that it's this most highly realistic picture ever. It doesn't have to look like a photograph. I'm learning folds and shapes in fabric. That's it. So since we're doing this for art though, what we're going to do is use the abstraction stage to sort of plan out our composition. You remember composition was a vocabulary word that we learned in Drawing and Design 1 about sort of focusing on the shapes where you're situating things so that you're looking at the most important things. So how I'm going to do this is take a bunch of pictures of this shawl, put different lights on it so I can sort of decide what I'm going to do. Okay, so I added a lamp. I can see a few more shadows on things now. Can't decide whether I want the shawl to be on that side or the other side. And I also added a pillow. My pillow has a really, really textured side that I think would be really hard to do. So I'm just going to keep it on the other side. So this one. And let me see if I like the lamp being closer to it. See if I get more shadows that way. I do kind of like that. So I'm going to switch it on the other side. Okay, so I am liking that a little bit more. And I actually just remembered that painting that's above the chair is one that I gave to my grandfather and then got back after he died as well. So I think this is kind of my picture. I see shadows in the fabric, check. I see it has a personal touch, and I'm just experimenting with different fabric folds. Now all I have to do is try to draw it, pick what my material, and then try to do it justice. So I'm going to take a couple pictures and then settle on one. Okay, so I think this is what I landed on. I kind of like the chair at an angle. Okay, remember, abstraction is what am I going to include, what is important, what is not important. So, looking back at my picture, I'm going to definitely include the blanket, the pillow, the chair, and the painting. I'm not going to worry about that brick texture in the wall. I'm not going to worry about the rest of the room. And then I'm just going to give it my best shot. So then I turned it black and white, and I messed with the contrast a little bit so I could see the shadows better. And I think this is my photo. Okay, and then the last stage in the planning process is algorithmic thinking. So thinking about what am I going to do first, second, third, and the process and the order in which you do something can really make a difference. So what are the steps? Something that I always say that you guys should be doing is the 5-minute rule, or the 5-second rule, depending on how detailed you're drawing. That's where you draw everything in the first few minutes so that you can make overall tweaks. Our instinct is to start on the most complicated part, and then you end up spending all of your time on one part of your drawing and then realizing that it doesn't fit, or you don't like how everything looks or where everything is situated. So algorithmic thinking, always start with the 5-minute rule, the 5-second rule. And then the rest of it is up to you. I mean, I usually do sort of an outline, and then I concentrate on my shadows first, and then I pick one thing that I really want to work on and go with that after that. But this is just to show you, doing art effectively or well is not always just pure talent that you either have or you don't. A lot of times it is just good planning. So there's a lot of hope in that. Okay, so that concludes the contemplate or planning stage. Now I know this video was a little bit long, but this is just sort of getting the ideas to, explaining it to you. In reality, this normally takes me like 5 minutes. So next we're going to talk about creating and critiquing.